And your third and final module for week 2, your mindset coaching. This one is a little bit science-based as well, but this is predominantly mindset. We're going to talk about today fluctuations on the scales and how to deal with them, how to cope with them. This is something that definitely comes up a lot. And I understand completely why. You might start a new process and you might jump on the scales, and there might be a whole different reason of things going on. You might feel like you've absolutely smashed your sessions in the week. You've stayed really on it with your nutrition. You've tracked everything, and the scale might be reading that you're a bit heavier or that it's a bit higher. So we're going to talk about why that is, all the different possibilities as to why that might be, and most importantly, to reset your thinking on the scales and to not panic when you see this happen, because it's going to happen and it's completely normal, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that you're not making progress. There are so many different reasons why. So let's delve in. First of all, most people freak out after they see a spike in weight and they quit. I've seen this time and time again happen to a lot of people. And I've heard it from a lot of previous clients before they've started working with me, that they've tried to lose weight before, they gained weight after 2 weeks and they stopped trying. Again, like, I completely understand, but this does not mean that you have gained weight. There are so many different reasons why. But what often happens is if you start a new thing, and particularly if you're someone that starts eating in a new way, like maybe what I've given you is quite new. For example, maybe you were doing low carb before and I've taken up your carbs, and suddenly you've seen that the weight's jumped up. A lot of people at this point freak out and think it doesn't work and then quit. You need to not do this. You've got to make sure, you've got to really understand that this doesn't mean that you're not making progress. We're going to go through why this could be the case now, but let's make that a condition and a promise from here and now, that if you do see this happen, you're not going to let it derail your progress, and you're not going to let it make you quit. So why does this happen? First of all, why the scale reading might be higher one week? First of all, hormonal changes. So there's so many different reasons for this. Our weight as women fluctuates more than it does for men, obviously because men do not have a menstrual cycle. So there's so many different reasons. So in the lead up to your period, the build up to your period, with everything that's going on with your body, you are going to weigh more because your uterus is like literally like shedding lining and changing. And also quite often, a lot of people report that around ovulation, which is the other flip side of the cycle. So these are two different parts. When women ovulate as well, quite often there's a bit of water retention. So you will find that particularly around then and around the time of your period, you jump on the scale, you're probably going to be a bit heavier. That's also a reason. That's one reason why, first of all. The next thing, we mentioned it just now, but water retention. Water retention is such a huge part of it. So it might have been that, so you jump on the scales, you're weighing a bit heavier. Might have been that last night you ate a few more carbs than usual. Or, like I said earlier, perhaps you're someone that has recently taken up their carbs, or I've got you to take up your carbs. Carbs bind to water when because obviously they're called carbohydrates, they bind to water in your body. So they do cause you to weigh a little bit more. It has nothing to do with fat gain or fat loss or anything like that. It's just because you've got more carbs in your system. The same with sodium. If you've had a little bit more salt than usual, say you went to the cinema the night before and you had salty popcorn, you've had more salt, so you're going to weigh a bit more. Also, your hydration levels. Your hydration levels is going to be really important. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're drinking enough water regardless. But if you're dehydrated, you are going to weigh more because your body will basically be trying to hold on to the water because it's feeling like you don't have enough. So it's really holding on to it. So that's why you also probably weigh a bit more in that instance as well. Time of day as well. So if you are someone that weighs yourself at different times of the day, different times of the week, and it's completely inconsistent, you're going to weigh completely differently first thing in the morning to first thing at night, because you've just got more food, and it's all to do with your bowel movements as well. So without being without being a bit gross, if you're weighing yourself first thing in the morning and you haven't been to the toilet yet, you're going to be heavier. You just will. So these are very important things to bear in mind as well: the time of day that you're weighing yourself and also your bowel movements. Exercise and muscle change is something that I feel like isn't chatted about a huge amount, but it has a big impact too. So obviously, as we're going through this process, not only are we losing fat, but we are building muscle at the same time, which is incredibly exciting. And I'm sure that most people have heard this, but obviously muscle does weigh more than fat. So sometimes if there might be a week where you're weighing slightly more or slightly less, you've got to remember that you are actually building that muscle as well. And also exercise induced inflammation. Quite often, when you do quite an intense workout, due to the inflammation in your body, you actually are a bit heavier afterwards as you're recovering. So if you have done a really intense workout, that also could be a reason why that you're weighing slightly heavier. Alcohol consumption is a big one. Obviously, when you're drinking alcohol, you're depleting your water levels. So again, your body's going to be holding on to that water level. Also, when we're drunk, right, and we've had a few drinks, we're much more likely to want to eat like the carby, more kind of like greasy foods and stuff as well, just because, who doesn't want like a kebab and stuff when they've been having a drink? So alcohol consumption, everything will definitely come into play. And finally, stress and sleep. I said this in the first training last week. Aside from your calories, your sleep is probably the most important, the second most important factor when it comes to fat loss. If we're not sleeping right, it's sending our hormones out of sync. Sorry. So for example, if we are not sleeping well, we're just naturally going to be under more stress. So we're going to have higher cortisol levels, which all has a big impact to our readings on the scales and your sleep patterns as well. We'll delve into sleep more as a module further down. But if our sleep is out of sync, that also means that our sleep hormones are out of sync, and that has a big, big impact when it comes to fat loss, fat gain too. So we've talked about this. Let me just move this out of the way. So we now know that if we're jumping on the scales one week and the reading is slightly higher, it could be for a multitude of reasons, right? Like that's not even like every single reason that I've listed there. Those are the big main ones. But there are so many. So what are we going to do to combat this going forwards, and how are we going to shift our mindset about the scales? First of all, we're not only using metrics as a way to monitor our progress, but we're also using photos. And this is why I am very adamant on every single person has to take progress pictures if they're a part of Zoe Williams coaching, because we use the scales just as a piece of data to check that the trending line of fat loss is going down, or if you're trying to gain weight, that it's going up. We're just making sure, and that's just a piece of data that I can use my side to check that we're on the right track. But there are so many things that the scales are not going to show you. The scales is just going to give you a reading, and it's not going to tell you like how much muscle you're building, how much your energy levels are going up by, how your clothes are fitting, how you're feeling. There are so many things that the scales won't tell you. So this is why we have to make sure we're taking these progress photos inside and out, because they're going to give us the full rounded picture. There might be one week where the scale perhaps doesn't move that much, but then we look at your photos and we're like, wow, look how much of a difference is there. And when we're going forwards as well. So that's one thing that we need to make sure that we're really being clear on. Obviously that's set as a weekly task for you every single week. You need to commit now and make sure that you get those photos done every single week. Trust me, I wish that I had taken more on my journey as well. The amount of people that I've heard that wish they took more photos, you'll be really thankful. If you're feeling slightly nervous about this, you'll be really thankful when you look back at the end of your process, or when you look back in a few weeks' time and you've got the initial pictures. You'll be really happy that you took them. So you need to make sure that you're doing those. Also, when we are doing the metrics, when we're checking in, whether that's once a week, twice a week, whatever I've given you, you need to make sure that you're weighing in at the same time each week, the same day of the week, the same days of the week, and the same time. Again, what we talked about in terms of like bowel movements, how much food is in your system, you're going to weigh differently at different points. So make sure that you're really making those variables very, very strict. Do it at the same time. If you always do it after you wake, as soon as you wake up, do it as soon as you wake up. If you always do it like after you've been to the toilet in the morning, always do it after you've been to the toilet in the morning. Also, using other monitors of success. Let's talk about this one first. So like I said, like obviously we need the scales there just to check that we're on the right track. But I just want to make it really clear that you are so much more than what you weigh. You are so much more. And there are so many other indicators of success on when you start to like take health and fitness really seriously. How you're not only just how you're looking, how you're performing in the gym, your strength increases. How your clothes are fitting, your energy levels, how you're feeling mentally, how you're feeling in yourself, how your relationships around you are improving, how your productivity at work is improving. There are so many other measures of success except for how much you weigh. And I promise you, the only reason that I get you to do this is just for my side, just to check in that we're on the right track. And you have so many more positive things other than just what you read on the scale. You've also got to be in it for the long game to combat this. Again, if you just jump on 1 week and see the weight's jumped up, you can't throw in the towel. You've got to keep going, because it's just 1 week. And that could be for a multitude of reasons. It might be the week that you've got your period, and of course you're going to weigh more. You need to stay in it and keep coming back each week, even if it feels hard, because I promise you that line, it's never going to go straight down like this or straight up like this. It's always going to kind of undulate and have those peaks and troughs. So you need to be aware of that and be in it for the long game. And also just focusing on the basics, making sure that you're staying hydrated. And as always, I've talked about making sure that you've got a really nice, consistent, balanced diet. Because those are the things that are going to help you keep getting that gradual fat loss. So these are also things that you need to remember. So we've talked about like how what we're going to do to combat this. Now, things that you have to remember. Fluctuations are going to happen. This is going to happen. There are going to be times where your weight's going to go up and it's going to go down. It happens to every single person, and it's never a linear straight line. So you need to accept that, and you need to remember why that could be, and remember that it's not because you're not making progress. And don't get in your head. Don't let it suddenly make you think that what you're doing isn't working or what I've given you isn't working. I promise you, if you do the stuff that I've given you, and if you do the things that I'm telling you to do, it will work. Again, focusing on how you're feeling and focusing on your performance, that is an absolute game changer. Yes, we've got physical goals, and yes, we've got things that we want to change, but also like that can't be the only thing that we're thinking about. You've also got to focus on how you're feeling, and you've got to focus on like the amazing feeling of getting stronger and how empowering that is. And also, if you do have a point where you're jumping on the scales and you freak out, remember this video, remember this training, and watch it back and watch it again if you need to. Remember, you've got access to this going forwards. So you need to remember what I'm telling you here, and don't suddenly let that go out of your head and forget. And like I said, if you do the stuff, it will work. So I hope this helps, because fluctuations and things are, sometimes they can be quite stressful to deal with, and I appreciate that. But this is just to really hit home that just because you fluctuate 1 week, it doesn't mean that you're not making progress, and you've got to get kind of used to the idea that might happen. And now you have the knowledge and you've got the power as to why that might be, so that you're going to stay on track and you're not going to let it derail you. So guys, that is the end of week 2. Next week we're going to be delving into some more topics.